Under the pale light of dawn, when the mist still clung to the thorny shrubs of the scrubland, and the first calls of francolins echoed across the silence, a tiny leopard cub cried out, lost and trembling, its golden coat, still marked with faint down and dark rosettes, blended with the dust and dry grass. The cub had wandered too far from its den, or perhaps something more tragic had happened in the night. Its mother driven away, killed, or forced to abandon her young to survive. Alone, the cub's mewling carried a sound too small for the wilderness, too fragile against a world that would devour weakness without hesitation. It was then that a lean, dust-colored stray dog, ribs showing faintly through her rough fur, appeared out of the brush. She had no owner, no collar, no tie to human hands. She lived by her own cunning on the edges of the village and the wild, scavenging near rubbish heaps, chasing field rats, sometimes daring to dart between goat herds for scraps. Yet she carried with her a weariness, the faint slackness of a mother whose milk had dried too soon, her own pups gone. Her nose twitched as she approached the sound, tail low, ears flicking nervously. What she found was no puppy. The cub turned toward her with wide amber eyes, its soft body trembling, emitting a pitiful cry that pierced her hesitation. The dog barked once, sharp and uncertain, stepping back, for the smell was strange, feline, wild, carrying the musk of something far beyond the boundaries of her world. But when the cub staggered toward her, unsteady on its small legs, pawing the ground clumsily and pressing against her chest as if searching for warmth, something ancient stirred. Maternal instinct is not bound by species. It surged in her like a tide. She lowered her head, licked the cub's ears, and nudged it closer to her belly, though there was little milk left. The cub suckled desperately, comforted more by contact than nourishment, while the stray dog curled protectively around it, baring her teeth at the circling crows that had already noticed weakness below. From that day, an unlikely bond grew. The dog carried the cub to the outskirts of the village, to the little hollow she had dug beneath the roots of an acacia tree. There she guarded it fiercely. Villagers at first thought she had stolen a puppy, but when they saw the spotted coat and the feline grace, murmurs spread quickly. Some warned of danger, whispering that when the cub grew, it would turn on her, its predator's blood awakening. Others, more superstitious, saw it as a sign, a blessing, or an omen, depending on the lens of fear or wonder, but the dog paid no heed to human tongues. She licked the cub clean each night, let it clamber over her back, and growled at anyone who dared to draw too close. The cub, in turn, followed her with unwavering devotion, copying her movements, even attempting to bark in soft, rasping coughs. It learned not only the stealth of its kind, but the scavenger's craft, how to nose through discarded food, how to circle around goats without provoking their herders, how to dart through shadows of firelight when villagers were distracted. Weeks passed. The cub grew strong, its limbs lengthened, muscles coiling beneath its skin, claws sharper, movements more fluid. And yet, when it should have begun learning to stalk antelope, to pounce on hare, it instead mimicked the dog's low-slung trot and her habit of scavenging near human fires. The bond between them became the subject of awe. Farmers would see them moving together at dusk, a dog and a leopard cub side by side like mismatched kin, and shake their heads in disbelief. One evening, as the air turned crimson with sunset and the smell of cooking fires drifted over the land, something extraordinary occurred. A pack of wild dogs came prowling near the village, lean and merciless, their eyes glowing with hunger. They spotted the cub, alone at the edge of the brush while the dogs scavenged nearby. The pack rushed forward, snarling, ready to tear apart what they saw as easy prey. The stray dog launched herself between them and the cub with a ferocity none expected. She fought like one possessed, teeth flashing, her hoarse barks defiant against the snarling chorus. The cub, though young, joined in with instinctive hisses and swipes of its claws, and together they drove the pack back, The stray bleeding but unbroken, the cub pressed to her side. It was a moment that silenced even the most skeptical villagers, watching from a distance. From then on, no one doubted their bond. The cub was no longer just a wild orphan. It was the stray's child. And the stray was no longer merely a nameless dog. She had become something larger, a guardian who defied the laws of the wild. Seasons shifted, and with them the cub grew into a creature neither wholly wild nor wholly tamed. Its paws had thickened, claws curved and gleaming, muscles sculpted beneath a coat, now richly patterned with rosettes that caught the sun like broken shadows. The stray dog, greyer now around her muzzle and slower in her step, still kept close to her adopted child. She had given the cub more than survival. She had given it belonging, though belonging to what was a question neither beast nor human could answer. By the time the cub was nearly a year old, it towered over her, its shoulder brushed higher than her back, its stride already sleek and pantherine, silent where hers was rough and clumsy. Yet the leopard still bent low when she nudged it, still whimpered like a pup when she wandered too far and it could not find her. And though it had inherited the stealth of its kind, it had also inherited her loyalty, something rare in a creature born to solitude. The villagers, however, watched with unease. They saw how its eyes lingered longer on their goats, how it flexed its claws in the dust when pigeons fluttered from the rooftops. "It is only a matter of time," they whispered. "A leopard cannot be raised by a dog. Sooner or later its nature will turn." Some argued it should be taken from her and handed to the forest rangers, perhaps raised in captivity, where instinct could be caged. Others insisted it be driven off before blood was spilled. Yet no one dared approach, for the dog's growl was fierce, and the cub's presence, even in youth, carried the gravity of a predator that would not be trifled with. One twilight, the conflict sharpened. A farmer's goat had vanished, its bloodied tracks leading into the thorn scrub where the dog and cub often roamed. Fingers pointed quickly, suspicion heavy. That evening, when the pair returned to the outskirts of the village, a group of men gathered with sticks and stones, shouting, advancing. The dog barked frantically, darting between them and the cub, her thin frame trembling but unyielding. The cub flattened its ears, tail twitching, letting out a low rumble that vibrated through the earth. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of pouncing or fleeing, the cub circled around to stand directly over the dog, shielding her with its body. Its snarl was not the hunger of a predator, but the warning of a protector. The villagers froze, caught between fear and awe. For a moment, under the copper glow of the setting sun, they saw not a wild killer, but a creature bound by loyalty, stronger than bloodlines. Days later, the mystery of the missing goat was solved. Feral dogs, not the cub, had dragged it away. The villagers quieted their threats, but the unease lingered. The cub was growing too quickly, and with each day the dog grew weaker. Her gait limped with age, her once sharp barks grew hoarse. The cub began hunting small hares and birds on its own, leaving the remains for her, as if roles were reversing, the child now feeding the mother. And yet, in the silence of night, when the stars wheeled above and the land smelled of dust and smoke, the cub would still curl tightly against her flank, pressing its great head beneath her chin, breathing in her scent. She would lick its ears, her tongue slow, her eyes tired but shining with pride. They had defied the world's rules together. But time was a law neither could escape. One evening a storm broke across the land, wind bending the acacia trees until they creaked. Lightning carved the sky in white scars. The dog and leopard huddled together in their hollow, the cub's body wrapped protectively around her. And when the dawn came, wet and golden, the dog did not rise. She lay still, her breath gone, her muzzle resting gently against his spotted flank. The leopard cub, no longer truly a cub, lifted its head and let out a sound that was neither a bark nor a roar, but something between, a cry of grief and longing that carried far across the scrubland. Villagers who heard it later swore it sounded almost human. The cub remained beside her all day, nudging her body, licking her face, waiting for her to stir. When night fell again, it finally rose, slow and reluctant, and vanished into the brush. From that day forward, the villagers said they would sometimes glimpse him at dusk, an enormous leopard with eyes burning amber, lingering on the outskirts, never attacking, never drawing near, as if watching, as if guarding the memory of the one creature who had taught him love before the wild reclaimed him. The seasons rolled forward, each one pressing the leopard further into the realm of the wild, yet always pulling him back to the edge of human settlement. He'd grown into a formidable male, his rosetted coat gleaming like molten gold under the sun, his shoulders broad, his eyes hard as amber glass. But unlike other leopards of his age, who claimed distant territories deep in the thorn forests or rocky hills, he lingered close to the boundary, where goats bleated and children's laughter carried on the wind. The villagers lived in constant contradiction, half in fear, half in reverence. They whispered stories around their fires, that he was not a true leopard but a spirit, that the stray dog had transformed him into something beyond predator, a guardian of sorts. And indeed, while the fields bore scars of jackals, hyenas and wild dogs, the leopard never took from them. He hunted deer in the gullies, antelope along the ridges, but not once did he drag away a goat or terrorize their herds. Instead, he appeared at twilight, silent and statuesque, watching from a distance as if counting, as if ensuring balance. One evening, a threat tested this balance. A rogue hyena clan, bold and numerous, began prowling the edges of the village, their laughter shrill, their confidence sharpened by hunger. They came not only for goats, but for scraps, for anything left unattended. The villagers had no defense strong enough, for their dogs were too few and too weak, and no fire burned hot enough to keep hyenas away when they gathered in a pack. It was on such a night, when the moon hung fat and pale, that the hyenas closed in on a pen of goats, their yelps and snarls splitting the air. The villagers rushed out with sticks, torches and shouts, but the pack did not scatter. Teeth flashed in the firelight. Fear shivered through human spines. And then the bushes erupted with a sound that cut through the night like thunder. The leopard sprang. His body, vast and rippling with power, struck the ground between the hyenas and the goats. His roar shook the dust from the acacias. The hyenas faltered, snarling, their courage waning. He lashed out, claws carving through one, jaws clamping down on another. Panic spread through the pack. Within moments, they scattered into the darkness, leaving silence broken only by the harsh pant of the leopard's breath. The villagers stood frozen, torches held high, their faces a mixture of terror and awe. He turned toward them then, his eyes glowing in the firelight, not with hunger, not with threat, but with something they could not name, a recognition. Perhaps even a trace of the stray dog who had once stood in that same place, baring her teeth to protect her cub. For a long moment, he lingered, then melted back into the shadows, gone as swiftly as he had appeared. From that night, the villagers no longer spoke of him with dread. They began leaving small offerings at the edge of the scrub, bowls of water, bits of meat, even scraps of cloth tied to branches in silent thanks. Children grew up on tales of the leopard who had been raised by a stray dog, who had learned loyalty where others knew only solitude. He became more than an animal. He became a story, a thread woven into the fabric of the people's lives. Years passed. Sometimes he was seen crossing a ridge at dusk, his great tail swinging low, his outline etched in firelight. Other times he was only a rumor, a shadow, a paw print pressed into the earth near the acacia hollow where the dog had once lived. But the villagers never forgot. And the leopard himself, though he ruled as a creature of the wild, never crossed the final threshold of separation. He belonged to two worlds and to neither, bound forever by the love of a stray dog who had once answered a cub's helpless cry. Years drifted on, and the leopard aged as all creatures must. His once sleek coat grew rougher, his muzzle silvered, and though his strength remained formidable, his strides slowed, his hunts shorter, his rests longer. The ridges and gullies that had been his kingdom now whispered of younger leopards, challengers circling at the edges of his range. Yet he still lingered near the village, always on the margins, never crossing into harm, his amber eyes watching from the tall grass as children played or women drew water from the well. The villagers had come to treat his presence as a quiet blessing. New generations of children were raised on stories of the stray dog who had taken in a leopard cub, of the bond that defied nature's laws. Elders told of how the leopard had once driven off a pack of hyenas, saving the herds when no man could. His image grew larger than his body. He became myth, half beast, half guardian. Mothers would hush quarrelsome little ones by whispering, "Hush, or the dog's leopard will hear you." But the tone was not fear. It was reverence. When the end came, it was as silent as the life he had led between two worlds. One morning, hunters found him lying beneath the old acacia tree where the stray dog had once made her den. His body was still, stretched in repose, as though he had simply lain down beside her memory to rest. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle, only the peace of a creature who had carried his story to its natural close. The villagers gathered around him with a solemn respect usually reserved for their own dead. No one dared take his pelt or claim his body for trophies. Instead, they dug a wide, deep grave beneath the roots of the acacia and laid him there, covering him with earth and stones. Some placed flowers, others bowls of milk, as though honoring both his feline nature and the dog who had raised him. For days afterward, the villagers claimed to hear his cry on the wind, low and mournful, as though he lingered in spirit even after his body was gone. In time, the tale of the leopard and the stray dog spread beyond the village. Travelers carried it from settlement to settlement until it became a legend retold at firesides far away. Some called it a parable of love, others of instinct, others of the mystery that binds all creatures together. But for the people who had lived alongside him, who had seen him with their own eyes, it was more than myth. It was truth, a reminder that the wilderness is not only teeth and hunger, but also tenderness, that bonds can be born in places where survival alone should reign. And so the leopard lived on, not in flesh, but in memory. Children still grew up hearing of the stray dog who had loved beyond her kind, of the cub who had learned loyalty instead of solitude, of the guardian who had watched over goats and people alike. When the moon rose full and white, some swore they saw his shadow pass along the ridge, his great form etched against the stars. Whether ghost or memory, it no longer mattered. He had become something greater, a story carried forward, proof that love, once given, does not vanish but shapes the world long after